Hi. Earlier this year, I released like half of a podcast episode titled Why I Left Alcoholics Anonymous. I did not like how it came out. It felt aimless. It felt kind of just like me going on a tangent. And it was like weird to listen to. So we're going to scratch that, start from the top. This is the video. This is the official Why I Left Alcoholics Anonymous. I have three main points that I'm going to make in this video. My three main points are: one, I don't believe in the concept of an alcoholic. Two, the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous are based in fear, and I wasn't down to live my life based in fear. Three, is it a cult? We'll talk about that and what it was like, the process of leaving. I spent the majority of my 20s in Alcoholics Anonymous. I started to seek help for substance use in my early 20s, and I was fearful of going to healthcare or psychiatrists because I didn't want, I had internalized stigma about substance use disorder in myself. So I liked the idea of Alcoholics Anonymous being anonymous, and I knew that it was just kind of underground, and I'm the kind of chick that would just rather go there than go to the hospital. So when you go to AA, you're met with very interesting dynamics, because you are met with so much love and so much support and people who you feel as though they're so invested in your well-being. And if you're going to AA, you're in a bad spot in life, right? So you welcome that. Simultaneously, you're getting feedback about yourself that you have this chronic condition of alcoholism, which in AA is made up of these three things, which is: one, a spiritual malady; two, an obsession of the mind; and then three, an allergy to the body. And you're also being told that you're very selfish and self-centered, and that you make a lot of decisions based on yourself. All of your decisions are based in fear or anger or lust, and that is why you're basically running your life into the ground. I'll put the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous on the screen here, and you can pause and read them if you want. I could do a whole video just talking about the 12 steps, the concepts of those. So you go through these steps with the sponsor, and during this time you're being very convinced and very indoctrinated into believing that the only way that you're going to live a happy, healthy life is if you stay sober for the rest of your life. And not only that, you stay inside Alcoholics Anonymous for the rest of your life, which is where that kind of culty behavior comes in. Once you're in, or I should say me, for me, once I was in Alcoholics Anonymous, truly, it felt very hard to leave, because I was praised for being basically the best of the fuck ups, right? I was given responsibility in this little society that runs on its own, because each meeting has service positions and that kind of stuff. And because there's no proper governing in here, it just really allows it so that the strongest personalities and the strongest egos are going to come forward, and they're going to run the room basically. And it's hard not to get swept up in the joyfulness of it. It's hard to not get swept up in the oh my goodness, I'm sober, I've never been able to do this, I feel so good, I like these new friends, I like that my sponsor wants me to go to this meeting and talk to this new girl and help her, because I feel as though my life was saved, right? So they're telling me I should pass it forward, and it's hard not to want to, and it's hard not to feel pressured to. It's also, once you have made this grand announcement to your friends and your family and your social circle of oh, I am an alcoholic, or I have an issue with substance use, and now I'm pursuing a life of abstinence, it's hard to go back on that. It's a very big social promise to me. When in Alcoholics Anonymous, when they were explaining what an alcoholic is, and they said that there's a spiritual malady, an obsession of the mind, and then a physical allergy. That made sense to me because I was somebody who had a substance use disorder, and I was somebody who I was living with undiagnosed concurrent disorders, which is when you have mental health and substance use running alongside each other. When I was in college, I learned a stat that 80% of people with substance use disorder have a mental health concern, either concern or diagnosis disorder. So most of us are living with concurrent disorders. And then when you're in AA, it's like being explained to you in just a like extremely outdated way. And they're telling you that if you're living godless, then you're doomed to a life of like misery, to a life of addiction. And they kind of hide that behind like it's a God of your own understanding. But at the day, the reality is that you're still telling people that if they don't admit that they're, like, step one is admit we're powerless over alcohol and then our lives become unmanageable. And then step two is came to believe a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity. Part of the backing still as to why they justify this kind of framework in the 21st century is that at the beginning of their book, the book of Alcoholics Anonymous, there is a doctor that writes in it saying that medical people had not thought of anything to help alcohol yet. People had not come up with any medical solution to addiction. But now in 2026, there is. Now in 2026, there is psychiatry available, and there's social work available, and there's medicine that does help cravings if you want it. And there's like peer support groups available that don't make you have social contracts within it of like you have a duty and a responsibility to show up here, or the doors might close, because that's like something that they very much push there, that if you, as somebody who has benefited from Alcoholics Anonymous, if you don't show up so that the next person can get a benefit, then it's all going to crumble, which of course has some merit to it. And I love community. I'm a very community driven person, so I obviously think that's a big reason why I was susceptible to indoctrination in Alcoholics Anonymous. But when you are like fearful of like looking your sponsor in the eye because you showed it to the meeting late, that's not cool. Like, you're not, it's a very like intense social hierarchy in there. I'm not gonna lie. Like, that kind of is like kind of bridging into, is it a cult or not? But I don't want to get there right now. Right now I wanted to talk about how the 12 steps are based in fear, and how I started to like exercise critical thinking and came to the conclusion on myself that I wanted to leave. I had been sober for maybe 2 years, and one of the big things I started to question is I was like, I'm not convinced that if I smoke a joint at the campfire that I'm not going to show up to work on Monday. You know? I did not end up finishing filming yesterday, so we're going to get right back into it. The idea of not being able to trust myself was just something that I didn't align with. I didn't believe that because I had an issue in my early 20s that for the rest of my life I wouldn't be able to control myself without being in this like very rigid structure of Alcoholics Anonymous. I think that it's actually very harmful to teach people that they're once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. That's very kind of famous rhetoric that is thrown around in there. And they have like literature that they say backs it up. But as we discussed earlier, their literature is like pretty outdated. I had a difficult time leaving because I had like women that I was sponsoring. I had a sponsor. I had a like home group that I was a member of. I had a service position in that group. I was like their secretary. So deciding to leave, there was a lot of like social obligations that I had to, I guess you could say, answer to be able to leave. And that kind of brings us into like, is it a cult? there's a website that is called People Leave Cults, and they have a definition of what a cult is that is based on like 21st century literature and research. And if you go online, there is an extensive definition of what a cult is, but I'm going to read what their kind of snapshot what a cult is. A group that is united by a particular cause, person, or idea that involves thought reform, coercive control, and restriction of autonomy. So, in my humble opinion, is Alcoholics Anonymous a cult? Yes, it is. By that definition, it is. When I was leaving, I had so many people that questioned my ability to exercise my critical thinking. I remember I had one conversation with somebody who I admired a lot, and she had taught me a lot, and in many different areas of my life, not just in like my relationship with sobriety. And she had asked me why I was making this decision without talking to my sponsor about it. And when I said to her, well, why would I talk about this with somebody who has lived their life for the last 30 years in this structuring and hasn't ever questioned it for themselves if they should leave? And then I remember when I asked that, she asked me about like if I had spoken to God about this. And I personally did form a relationship with God in Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm not Christian by any means, but I have a relationship with spirituality now. And I remember saying to her, like, yes, I have talked to God about this, and it's like kind of like insulting that you would think that I would make a big decision like this without doing so, as I've already exercised and shown you in the last like nearly 5 years that I've been here that I do consult my spiritual life. And that conversation kind of ended there. I also believe that people go into Alcoholics Anonymous with one issue and they leave with a different issue. That happened to me. I went to Alcoholics Anonymous because I had issues with alcohol. I stayed sober for 7 months, and then when I relapsed, I had met a girl in there who was addicted to methamphetamine, and we became friends. And then I began using meth, and I haven't touched that in over 7 years now, for the record. But, you know, anyway, overall, I do think that, like, there's more harm there than there is good. They give out, like, a good structure for people to be able to get sober, and it's widely accessible because it's, like, underground, so there's meetings all the time. You know, there's meetings, especially online now after the pandemic. But it definitely, 100% exercises, like, coercive thinking in people. And if you are going out of the norm of like not being fully indoctrinated, then you're seen as somebody who's like not giving it your all. You're not, you know, praised the way that other people are in the program who are only using Alcoholics Anonymous. No psychiatry, no meds, nothing. And because there's no governing, predatory behavior happens there. That's a fact. And I had to go through like a deprogramming. Like I had to teach myself how to trust myself again. I had to teach myself how to allow myself to experience anger, because that's something that you're not allowed to experience there. You're not allowed to experience like anger, regret, anything like that, because I think that if you harbor those feelings, then you're going to eventually like self-destruct, whether it's through substance or like shopping or something. I don't know. I learned good skills there though. Like I learned how to be able to see other people's point of views without focusing on my part of it. And I learned how to get myself out of a bad mood. I learned how to get myself out of a bad mood by helping others. I formed my own personal spirituality there. So that was good too. But I'm damn grateful that I left. There's a lot of people that go in there and they end up living their whole life there, living in fear. And women there are really told like, oh, women only hit 5 years sobriety and then they leave. Well, you know, a lot of us have children and we have careers and we pursue education and we build a life up from where we were when we first entered recovery. I don't think that it's helpful to keep people in a binary of expectations of what they needed to get sober in the first like stages of change, because maintenance is a lot different than creating change. Anyway, that's what I have for this video. Thank you so much for coming here and listening. I love you so much. You're like literally so pretty, so hot. Oh my god, point blank on period. I'm Dana Monica. You can call me Dana though. All my friends do. Thank you so much. Subscribe to the channel. And if you like stand-up comedy, I do stand-up comedy in Hamilton, Ontario. Check that out. And you are pretty. Bye. Ending these things is weird. Bye.